And joining us now is former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and CNN Senior Military Analyst, Admiral James Stavridis. He's also a partner at the investment firm The Carlyle Group and author of The Admiral's Bookshelf. Admiral, thanks so much for being here with us as we sort through all of this. I want to go back to a couple things that Betsy and Jeremy were explaining. Jeremy was laying out that Israel, the Israeli government has said that they cannot alone militarily eliminate this threat, that they do need help. And a big part of that is because Iran's major enrichment site, Fordow, is deep in a mountainside, and it will likely require, and this is where I want your expertise to come in, but it would likely require one of these bunker buster bombs that the U.S. has at this point, but has not, is obviously not involved militarily. Do you think that Israel is going to ultimately need the U.S. to step in here militarily to achieve this objective?
In order to take out the deeply buried, extremely hardened sites like Fordow, yes, they are going to need this bunker busting bomb, BBB, not to be confused with the Big Beautiful Bill in Washington these days. This is, in technical terms, a mass ordnance penetrator, and we fly it, Jessica, on our biggest and most capable strategic bomber, the B-2 Spirit bomber that we use and hope never to use for nuclear strikes. So it would be a very big step for the United States to come in and do this. If we did it, it would probably knock the Iranian program back 2 years, which is pretty significant. What we don't know, to close, is are we sure we know where all the sites are? This is a big country, 2.5 times the size of Texas, and the Iranians have been digging in literally and figuratively since the revolution 40 plus years ago. So I think that's the decision the White House is going to have to wrestle with. The Israelis can accomplish a lot of damage by themselves. You're seeing it right now. To get at that program and really put it to bed, so to speak, at least for a period of a couple of years, would require the United States.
And the Israeli ambassador told ABC this week that Israel had, in his words, a number of contingencies for achieving this without the U.S. What might that look like? Does that require people on the ground then there?
It would be some combination of boots on the ground, special forces, and certainly we've seen over just the last series of strikes a lot of indicators that Israel has deeply penetrated the Iranian society and has people on the inside. In addition to people, there'd probably be a significant cyber component, take away the electrical grid, go in and reverse engineer those centrifuges causing self-destruction. I think a third element would be some drone activity, even drones that could operate in tunnels underground. And then fourth and finally, if what you need is a 30,000-pound bomb and all you have is 2,000-pound bombs, you just keep throwing a lot at the problem, going deeper and deeper, strike after strike. Puts your pilots at more risk, but there are options for Israel, not as clean as getting the U.S. to come in with one of those bunker-busting bombs.
And so, okay, so to that end, you have that piece of it and the big question about if the U.S. would come in with those bombs. What capabilities does Iran or its proxies have to act against U.S. interests in the regions? I would think that would be quite a significant step, though, for them to do that.
It would be, and certainly Iran is not going to do something against the United States while we're standing back from this, because they know if they came after a U.S. embassy, launched a terror attack, attacked a U.S. cruise liner, I can think of any number of things they could do directly against the United States. But if they do that, I guarantee you, right back to where we were speaking a moment ago, President Trump has made very clear he'll step up and participate in a significant way in strikes against Iran. But what could the Iranians do? Ground operations, terrorist attacks, if you will. They could use cyber. They could try and close the Strait of Hormuz with mines or sunken ships. They could go after high-level assassinations. There are a variety of tools at their disposal. The good news, Jessica, is that many of those have been weakened over the weeks and months of the war between Israel and Iran that frankly has been going on at a high pace really for almost 2 years.
And two U.S. officials, this was what Betsy was reporting on, tell CNN that President Trump rejected an Israeli plan to kill Iran's supreme leader. And several top Iranian military leaders we know have been killed in these strikes as very methodically by the Israelis. Do you think the ultimate goal here, and that this is a potential outcome, is regime change in Iran?
Certainly that's the Israeli goal, full stop. The United States, I think the Trump administration has been clear. They're willing to come to the table and have a negotiation. The objective would be to dismantle completely the Iranian nuclear program, not just nuclear weapon, but take away that ability to enrich uranium, which of course is the basis of a nuclear weapon. But from what I can hear in the tone and the approach of U.S. individuals, it's still at a stage where a deal could be made. And you read a statement a moment ago from President Trump that offered, if you will, an olive branch to the Iranians. The question is, will they be capable of reaching out and taking that olive branch? I'm not so sure they will, but I think the Trump administration is correct to continue to make that offer, at least at this stage, as long as you hold in reserve the ability to shrug your shoulders and say, okay, Iran has turned down this deal. Now it's time to go in with the Israelis and really end this nuclear program.
And as all of this is transpiring, President Trump is headed to Canada for the G7 summit. It was already going to be, of course, high stakes. It's the G7, but also with Russia and Ukraine really the front burner. Now this is really on the front burner. What are you expecting to see, and what are you watching for this week as these world leaders meet?
I'm looking at three different scenarios that are going to be illuminated, shall we say, by what happens at the G7. You've mentioned two of them. One is Ukraine. To what degree will the G7 unify and continue to and even increase pressure on Russia to get to a negotiation? Secondly, and kind of similarly, how can the G7, the rest of the G7, the others besides the United States, be helpful in the current state of affairs in the Middle East? I think a show of unity from those big global economies could be helpful in convincing Tehran to get to the negotiating table. The one you haven't mentioned, which was something we talked about constantly just 2 or 3 weeks ago, of course, is trade and tariffs. Here's the president going to Canada. The United States and Canada have a significant disagreement, shall we say, on trade and tariffs. Mexico similarly. And of course, we ought to be very concerned about U.S.-China tariff. That's one to watch. Again, we need unity from the G7 in order to resolve all of these. Final thought here, Jessica. The toughest trade negotiation may well end up not being Mexico, not being Canada, not being China. It could be the European Union. Here's an opportunity in Canada for the president to do some solid work getting a trade deal between the U.S. and the EU, the two biggest economies in the world.
All right, much to come on this. Admiral, thanks so much for being here with us. We really do appreciate your thoughts on all of this.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.